Oh, that's smooth. Look at that. Hey, welcome in, guys, to our inaugural episode of the Train to Win podcast. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Blake Bernard. I am the owner of Grindhouse Strength and Conditioning. And for our inaugural episode, I don't have a guest tonight. I have a really cool lineup for probably our next 10 to 15 episodes. But on short notice, knowing that we were going to do this thing live, I thought it would actually be a better opportunity, no better opportunity than to introduce you guys or introduce myself to you guys for anybody who maybe doesn't know my story or hasn't seen Muscle Matters or any of the other podcasts I've shown up on with 511 Media. So without further ado, I started working with these guys, that being 511 Media, about 6 months ago. I was asked to co-host a show called Muscle Matters. And at the time, I already had my own podcast. I was like about 20 episodes deep on the House Blend podcast, my strength and conditioning facility. Its name is Grindhouse Strength and Conditioning. I'm a coffee guy, so the House Blend made sense, right? The problem with House Blend was that I spend my time leading my staff and coaching athletes. And, being a steward of my, a minister over my household, right? And a bunch of other things that don't include editing audio and video. It's just not my strong suit. And so that thing kind of like came to it was a slow death. Okay. But I can say it's dead now. And on that podcast, we talked all things strength and conditioning, performance, brought on some of the nation's greatest minds in human development, physical performance. And it was just time. I really enjoyed it. But at the end of the day, I couldn't justify spending hours behind a computer when I had a team to lead, a family to lead, and, a godly lifestyle to live. So around that time, in came Mr. Mike Harvey and Tom Touchstone, and it was at the perfect time. It was God's time, man. Gave me another outlet to run my mouth and talk about Jesus, talk about the things that I'm interested in. And 6 months later, they gave me this cool opportunity to do this. So, Tom, man, I appreciate you.
Love you.
I really do. So, anyways, here we are. Okay, this is the solo thing. And so before we get rolling, you guys got to know who it is that you're watching, that you're listening to. Okay. So as of this recording, 30 years old. Okay. 30 years young. And I'm a husband to my wife, Erica. She's wonderful. She's honestly my better half and completes me in every way. The only thing we overlap on is we're both charismatic, which gets us in trouble. Okay. But every other trait, man, she absolutely completes the roughneck you see in front of you. Okay. I am father to two beautiful children, JC and Bo, at home, 5 and 2 years old. I thought I was going to be a girl dad. I thought I was cool with being that for the rest of my life. And then I had a son, Bo, and I thought that was pretty cool too. So we'll see what the Lord wants to do with them. But it's honestly my favorite of all the occupations. It's just being a dad and just being a family man, and everything else is second to that. So just, watching them grow up, develop. My daughter is doing, she's 5, about to turn 6. And she's finally, at that age where it's time to start organized sports. She's in gymnastics right now, and it's just, dude, the fire's getting lit. It's seriously the best part of my week. So that's a little bit about the home life. Okay. I've owned my gym facility for going on 4 years. Okay. In 2021, we were the fastest growing privately owned facility in America. Very proud of that. And our primary demographic is working with athletes. So people, primarily junior high school, college kids that play team sports and solo sports, want to be faster, stronger, bigger. And we take the whole character development thing very seriously as well. We pride ourselves on getting them results, but also holding them accountable in a way that we can't always guarantee is happening within the home. And that seems to have helped us carve out quite the niche in our community, because we're no BS. We just are what we are. No one is disappointed at the end of the day, because we are pretty shameless about who we are. Okay. So as you can see from the smile on my face, I love what I do. And I love I love all the people I get to interact with on a given day. I do believe the Lord put me on this earth to help people, and as long as I have a working body, I think I'm going to be doing something in the fitness space. Although being a ex-college athlete myself, I particularly enjoy that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we're currently at 30 years young. Okay, now to backtrack, this is 511 Media. Okay, this is all about Jesus. Okay, and I think, like, you guys want to hear an overcoming story, I will tell you my testimony. Okay, and it's been a while since I've said this, so I'm excited about it. Ultimately, I was born on April 4th, I'm kidding. I'm not going to go into that, but I think we can start in high school. Okay, I was blessed with an awesome family. Okay, I was not underprivileged in any way. Was not that football player. Okay, like, I was not the kid with the harrowing home life, getting into trouble, doing everything to stay off the streets. That was not me. Okay, I had a really good set of parents. I had a sister that loved me. Looking back on it, though, I didn't always recognize it, I had a good home situation. Okay, and it wasn't until later in life that I realized how awesome it was. Just being honest with you guys, I was a high school kid, right? Long story short, early on in my life, before I grew into this frame, I was tall and skinny, got picked on a ton. That I mention that only because it's done a lot to shape who I am today and the heart I have towards the kids that I work with. We'll circle back around to that. But long story short, I didn't really start growing till I was like sophomore, junior in high school, started filling out. And you know what happens when you're like playing peewee football? The tallest kids, doesn't matter if they fit any other description of a lineman. If you're tall, you're a lineman, right? And probably would have been better at any other position, but that's where they stuck me, and that's what I committed myself to. So when I got time to, for my hormones to turn on and everything, what did I want to do? I wanted to get to 300 pounds as soon as possible. So I started eating, training hard, and got there. But all along the way, still wasn't taken very seriously. The bullying had stopped, right? But I really hadn't grown into me yet. I wasn't confident with who I was. I still didn't know who Blake was, to be honest with you. I knew who I wanted to be. I, probably looked up to some of the wrong people, right? And just, the guys in my people group, just wanted to be like them, wanted more attention, and wanted to carve a name out for myself. So you can see where that could maybe lead to some problems down the road, right? Turning 17, junior year of high school, man, was the first time my football career like really took off. I guess that would be considered a late bloomer. And long story short, once I started gathering accolades and awards and being recognized in the community as one of the better football players in town, that's when I started getting that attention. But I'll be honest with you, like, for a guy who never had it before, I didn't know what to do with it. And I'll be honest, I got in a lot of trouble. I have never lacked in confidence probably since that time, to be honest with you. Never lacked confidence since the day I was born. Both my parents were college administrators, leaders in their own fields. And as a result, you can probably imagine I don't struggle to talk to people. And so that, with a ballooning head, a ballooning ego that's growing by the day, as like the football success stacking up, you can imagine, recipe for disaster, right? So going into my senior year, I promise there's a point to this, okay? I'm not here to tell you how good I was at football. I promise Jesus shows up here, okay? We, as a high school football team at Frontier, I graduated in 11, okay? Fast forward to my senior season, I basically stopped showing up to class. I thought it was going to be like Fast Times at Ridgemont High or any Not Another Teen Movie, any of those where it's like the jock doesn't show up, the teachers still pass him, he can cheat through all of his tests, all that kind of stuff. It almost worked, almost. Okay, but I had a teacher that I reviled at the time. I now know she was the best thing for me. That failed me. Okay. And honestly, they all had the right to fail me, but only one of them did. And it was one of those key classes you needed to graduate, right? So long story short, halfway through my senior season, I got word right before we were playing BHS in the big game that I was academically ineligible. And I was basically able to finish out that game and I'd be done for the year. Okay. So every you can imagine, for a guy who'd played football his entire life, dad was a college football coach, all that, like my identity was ripped right from me, and praise God that it was. Okay. But at the time I didn't know what the identity to fill that void was. Okay. Ultimately, all the college attention that I was getting at the time, the offers I had on the table, all of that gone in the blink of an eye. Okay. And I say that with a smile on my face now, but at the time, it was, my whole world was crumbling around me. So things got worse before they got better. As you can imagine, my perspective of where my career was headed, or even what was happening after high school, any of that was kind of up in the air. Going into the spring semester, my coaches fought hard for me to show up in the All-Star game. This is my biggest claim to fame from high school. Looking back on it, was I'm the only guy in Bakersfield history. I don't know if you know this, Tom, the only guy in the Arena Bowl history to ever get kicked out of that game. Yeah, I know. And so long story short, I was totally heathen. Like I did not have my head set on straight. And I told my dad and my mom that it was I didn't have a plan really. And that summer I ended up getting kicked out of my home. Okay. That was another big wake up call. I was just taking out all my angers and stuff like that on them. Long story short, I ended up deciding upon moving back into the home at the end of the year. I'd been living with some buddies, had some time to kind of think, and I made a deal with my dad. I was like, hey, it's not good that I don't do anything. I'm going to pick football back up, right? This is still pre-Jesus. I still consider it pre-Jesus. And, I had to get my act together somehow. So how else was I going to fill that void? I went the junior college route, spent a summer with Bakersfield College. And, I love Chuck. I love Coach Chudy for everything that he is. He wasn't right for me at that exact moment. Like I said, I came from a really good family. So I had this awesome opportunity that my parents said, hey, you probably need to get away from your friend group here locally. We will pay your way to go play junior college football somewhere else. And praise God for that. I didn't deserve it. Okay. But for whatever reason, they thought I was worthy. And so I went down to Saddleback College. Before that, tried to take my life twice. Okay. Thank goodness those things did not go through. But I'm telling you, I was in a bad spot. Okay. Spiritually, nothing there. I was like dead on arrival. Okay. When I got Saddleback, it was like, okay, I'm out of my parents' house. I basically, if you guys know where that's at, it's Southern Orange County. So basically, tons of money, Laguna Beach, okay, where all the reality TV shows were being filmed, all that kind of stuff. I got my truest college experience there, okay? But along the way, that little bit of freedom and a cleaving and leaving from my friend group at the time was the best thing for me, okay? Because it forced me to grow up. I had been completely immature up until then. It forced me to figure things out, who I was as a man, apart from my parents, apart from football, all of those things. I had already experienced life without it. It wasn't that cool. Okay. So football was my re-entry back into society, and I got to do it in a different place this time around. Okay. So long story short, we restarted this whole thing. And on that team, I was given an awesome friend. His name's Duran Workman, and Duran invited me to church. He was from West Virginia. Okay. And Duran was a bounce back from a Division I university. He went to West Point, actually, and then ended up back at Saddleback. So you can imagine coming from officer school, okay, to a junior college in California. He's got his head screwed on straight a little bit tighter than me. The Lord put him in my life. I went to church with him, ended up getting baptized at Saddleback Church by Rick Warren. And that's when things started to change. Okay. I was raised in church. I never lacked in the church area. Okay. I was raised in a Nazarene church, and I went to church, but I didn't know who Jesus was. I didn't know what my identity was. It still wasn't real to me. And I think a lot of young men can relate to that one, because it was just religion up until that point. It was something you did on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. And it wasn't something I did throughout the week. I didn't know how to read my Bible, none of that stuff. So when I moved out and became an adult and had to mature, I had to make it real for me. Okay. I think that was one of the best things ever. So I got baptized there, which was Southern Baptist, I believe, at the time. I want to say that was before they changed denominations, whatever. And so like spiritual giftings and things were not what they were teaching, right? That wasn't the focus of their ministry or anything. I ended up finding my way to this weird Bible study. We were speaking in tongues before I even knew what that was. Like, just the Lord was doing crazy things in my life before I even knew which way was up. Okay. And through my 3 years at Saddleback College, football career took back off, changed positions, moved outside, lost a little bit of weight, got a little bit faster, moved to defensive end, finished out my career there with a little bit of momentum. I had begun like leading some junior high school ministries local to just right down the street from our community college. But I was still living this like double life. I was 1 foot into, living the football player lifestyle and also 1 foot into Jesus. But man, that's a lot better than where I was in high school. I'll be the first to tell you that. So fast forward a little bit. I ended up wrapping up my playing years there, transferred to Henderson State, and that was awesome again. Change of environment, change in scenery. My parents weren't funding it anymore. Now it's like my scholarship and, whatever else. It was wonderful. Okay. Ended up basically taking all the lessons I'd learned and even some of the convictions I had about, being 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was on the fence, and there's no fence with salvation, right? The Lord started chipping away at it then. And so at Henderson State, cleaned up my act a little bit more, got a little bit closer to Jesus. It was around that time I met my wife. One of the summers I was home, we met at Canyon Hills and in their young adults ministry. And through that, got plugged in with a bunch of people that were in college just like me and were chasing the Lord just like I wanted to. And so it's kind of weird, like the Lord actually ripped me out of a different relationship and told me, hey, I want you to do this thing with Erica, right? And I had no idea what the Lord's voice even sounded like at that time. But I had the sense to know that what I felt was like weighing so heavily on me was spiritual. And I knew that the reasons behind it aligned with who I knew Jesus to be at the time, And so I just kind of, I don't know, I guess I had the sense to test the spirits. And thank goodness I pursued things with Erica. And man, she was a huge catalyst for just bringing me closer to the Lord. Like I said, she's the opposite of me. Every way that I was a heathen, she was completely pure. And so long story short, I keep saying that. That probably means that my short story is really long. But we ended up pursuing, we got plugged in as leaders in that community as well. It was something really cool for me to come home to, kind of like home base, right? Bakersfield had a little bit different meaning for me now. And ended up finishing out my football career, came home, got married. Okay, now it's time to go into the workplace. Okay, I was so sick of football by that time and was so excited to get married and start a family that we got married immediately. I skipped my pro day, the whole 9 yards. I was done with football. And I really wanted to get on with the family thing. I was, she's wonderful for me. I wanted to start, filling the earth with her seed, right? So here's the deal. That's the cool thing about live. I can say ridiculous things like that and no one gets to edit it. So here's the deal. I was going the firefighting route. And while we were doing that, okay, I was in a firefighting academy actually at the time when we had our firstborn. And the minute that I got that girl to take a bottle, the Lord told me in that moment, he goes, dude, you're meant to be a dad, not a firefighter. And that was one of the coolest things. Cause like I said, I still was not super, okay. I was starting to become more attuned spiritually, right? Like actually letting Holy Spirit do things and chip away at me. But I still wouldn't say at that point, like I really knew what the Lord's voice sounded like. Okay. I was getting an idea. I was still growing a lot. And so when he said that, I took it seriously and I finished out that academy, but everywhere else I was testing with and interviewing with, dropped it like cold turkey. Okay. So firefighting was done. My wife was a high school PE teacher at the time. And she said, you love kids. Why don't you substitute teach and see if you would like to teach? Well, you know what they say, and if they don't say this, I say this. If you fall in love with teaching through substitute teaching, getting treated like crap every day by these kids, it probably means you're meant to be in the classroom. And that was me. Like I said, I came from a long line of educators, so it was natural. It was the easiest thing in the world. If I know one thing, is if your occupation comes easy to you, it's likely where you're supposed to be, right? And it's likely your calling, because whatever you can do easily frees you up mentally, spiritually, to then go focus on ministry in that place. You can't focus on those things if you're like just fighting to keep your head above water the entire time, right? So that was teaching for me. I taught, I coached football, and I absolutely loved it. But around that time, we were thinking about our second child, and at this point, we were completely in ministry, doing it, not on staff or anything, but, multiple midweek engagements, it was our life, right? Well, when the second came around, the trouble doubled, right? So we got plucked out of everything, all the community that we were in. Being the first to marry, being the first to have kids of all your friends, you guys know, you're all of a sudden you have a different schedule than everyone else. So slowly but surely, we kind of like dissolved in the community aspect. And that was a really hard thing to recover. We'll come back to that in a little bit. While I was teaching, Mama was now staying at home with our firstborn. We started thinking about our second. Okay. Now, in those talks, we decided like, okay, she's going to stay home. She doesn't need to get another job, but like me teaching by myself isn't probably enough income. Okay. And current high pay is great, but not that great. So I had to figure out a side hustle. Being that I'm a 6'1", 260-pound guy, and 3 years ago and all before that with a six-pack, Tom, I promise, okay? Like I was always the guy people would ask for fitness advice. So I was like, well, why don't I get certified and start coaching people? I didn't end up getting certified, but I started using the $20,000 of equipment that I had in my garage to start training coworkers. So our principal, couple neighbors, our dean, some teachers on staff as well. It was just like, when I'm done coaching that evening, we'll train. And I was just doing the stuff I did as an athlete with them and with decent success. Okay. My mom was actually my first client, but I was burning the candle at both ends. I was doing morning trainings before school, doing the 9 to 5 at Golden Valley High School, 8 to 3, and then coaching football after that, getting home, training people after that. It just became a thing. Okay. I didn't get to see my family much, but on the weekends. So here's the deal. Coming around to 2020, the world was put on pause in March. Well, kids had no school, and I didn't have any school to teach. So I reached out to some of my football coach acquaintances and just said, hey, I've got this gym. I train people. If you trust me with your kids, I'll give them something to do for the 2 weeks while 2 weeks to slow the spread, right? And in that time, one local coach, interestingly enough, he's the coach of the winningest program in the last decade in Bakersfield. He's the only one that took me up on that offer. And he sent me 2 groups of 6 kids each. And I said, hey, as long as they're not knuckleheads, they're going to be in my home. I'll take care of them. And glory be to God, he sent me some really good athletes, all very young. Okay. These are like sophomores, and I think they were all sophomores, to be honest. They were like future talent of his. Probably didn't trust me not to wreck any of his seniors or anything like that. And thank goodness he didn't, because I don't know what I would have done. This story might go a little bit differently if I had. But here's the deal. That 2 weeks became 4 weeks. Those 4 weeks we were out of school became 8. And now we're rolling into summer, and I'm like, we've been training 4 days a week this entire time in my garage. The kids are loving it. I'm loving it, but I've been doing this thing for free. And I'm like, the city of Bakersfield is breathing down our neck to cease the noise complaints, because we're blaring gangster rap out of my garage and dragging sleds in the street and just getting after it, right? Chalks flying. My neighbors didn't like that. So they're calling that in constantly. And so they basically ended up sending multiple cease and desist letters. And I just said, guys, I can't do this for free anymore. If you guys want to continue, I'm probably gonna have to find a different spots. Would your parents pay for this? And I did that tactically, actually. We retested before I asked that question, and they blew their numbers out of the water. Okay. These are all kids that come from an affluent area of town. They'd all received extracurricular coaching in the past. And they were incredibly impressed. Like, I could spat off some numbers. I don't even know if the people listening would know them, but they made massive improvements, like abnormal. Okay. And their coach was impressed. The parents were impressed. They said, yeah, we'll pay whatever. So I didn't know what to set my price at. I immediately went to like double the most expensive in town, and dude, made rent at the next warehouse we found. And the rest is history. In 6 months, we had 60 athletes. In 9 months, we had 100. And an adult population on top of that, with a buddy of mine who came on to coach with me in the garage. It became a business at that point, And so we'll fast forward a little bit, a year and a half into that. I was still teaching. I had a 4,000 square foot warehouse gym with 100 athletes in it. And it was kind of becoming this beast that, like, the word says you can't serve two masters, right? And so ultimately, if I learned one thing from my dad, he said, if you're going to do anything, you got to be able to do it with all your heart, as if you're working for the Lord, not for men. And it was getting to that point where I kind of had to make a decision, because I couldn't do both at 70% and feel good about myself. I wanted to be all in on one thing. So I read this awesome book by Stephen Pressfield. He basically talks about, the shadow man being this thing you could think about in spiritual sense. It's anything that's keeping you from your ultimate calling, right? And for me, that was in Jesus. Occupationally, that was anything that would bring fulfillment and put food on the table for my family. And so it was a really easy decision. I actually was at a speaking engagement for strength conditioning one weekend in Atlanta, Georgia. And on the flight home, I read that passage in that book. And Holy Spirit hit me like a ton of bricks. He goes, dude, teaching's your shadow man. You love it, but that's not where I call you to be. And so I called my wife the minute I landed. I was like, I'm done teaching. I'm going to finish out this year. I'm going to do things right with integrity and call it. So that's what happened. All right. And so it's been all gas, no brake, all grindhouse since then. We've grown to 6,500 square feet in the same facility, just absorbing all the suites next to us. We're up to 150 members, and it's been absolutely wonderful. Okay. So by and large, looking back on that whole thing, I was raised in a really good family that genuinely, I believe, wanted me to love and chase the Lord. I don't think I would have connected with Duran Workman at Saddleback College. I don't think I would have had friends to pull me off the train tracks, in Bakersfield before I even went to college when I was trying to take my life. I don't think that, I would have felt all the little nudges and all those things without the people who interceded for me leading up to that moment. My mom never stopped praying for me. My dad never stopped praying for me. I'm shaking, man. I don't think I've ever said this to anyone, to be honest. Better to say it live, right? So there are people, elders in our church, that I don't have any relationship with, but I know they've prayed for me my entire life, because that's what the Lord laid on their heart. They had a relationship with my parents, not me. Okay. Those prayers came to fruition 2 decades after they started. Okay. And it wasn't by any fault of my own, or rather by any doing of my own. To be honest, I really do believe that those things were stored up for me. And those like anointings and that delayed process of sanctification happened way later, but at the perfect time. When I started developing that maturity, I was placed in an environment where I had to figure it out for myself. It wasn't handed to me by parents or friends or anything like that. It wasn't Sunday service for me. It was the thing that kept me off the railroad tracks. It was the thing that revitalized my football career. It was the thing that got me into my calling at 26, 27 years old. And it's only gotten better over time. It's like that maturation process in Christ. Now at 30 feels like I haven't even scratched my spiritual prime yet, but I want to get there. Doing life with Jesus is so much better than fighting to find a man, I'm gonna get choked up. Sorry, guys. It is so much better than wandering the desert, trying to fill those holes in my heart with anything that I felt, belonged. Okay. Did everything with the world, the drugs, the alcohol, the women, the sports. None of it feels like Jesus. So the title of this podcast is Train to Win. It's a play on scripture. Okay. There are actually a ton of scriptural sources for this, but particularly 1 Corinthians 9:24. He says that, do you not know that in a race, this is Paul talking, all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. I love references to athletics or like competition in the word, because they fire me up. You speak my language as an athlete, right? I ran the race with perseverance. Okay. Clearly, I gave it my best effort, like I do every day in the gym, still to this day. But man, like I said, the athletics, the worldly stuff, they pale in comparison to running the race that Jesus had set for me. I mean, I never thought I'd be saying that, just to be completely honest with you guys. So ultimately, the Train to Win podcast is going to be about things that I'm into. Just being honest with you guys, this thing's going to attract people like me, I pray. So it's going to involve things like strength and conditioning, because I freaking love performance. Okay. It's also going to involve leadership. Okay. That is a huge part of it's literally, it consumes everything that I read, everything that I do on a daily basis, developing my team. Like I said, being a minister, a steward over my household at home. So being a good dad, being a good husband, being the leader that they require me to be, but also leading in our community and being a leader, really wherever I'm at. Okay. Thirdly, sorry, I took notes, guys. Okay. Lastly, I don't know why I had to look at my notes for this. It's going to include a lot of Jesus. Okay. Because ultimately, none of this thing would have happened without it. Those are the three things I'm passionate about. Okay. And in no particular order, but like I wouldn't be caught dead on camera not talking about how to make kids, athletes, faster and stronger, talking about what it means to be a godly leader, in wherever he's got you. And then lastly, the cool things that Jesus is doing in my life. That's what consumes my thoughts and everything that I read on a daily basis. And if you guys are into that, you found a home here. Okay. So what does this look like on a weekly basis? Okay. I'm going to have on as many guests as I can find. Unlike the House Blend podcast, I might bring on some of those guys again. I'll be honest with you, in this industry, there aren't a lot of believers. The soil's a little bit different. Okay. But that's not going to stop me from bringing on people that have insights and knowledges, things that maybe can help the parents out there that want to use best practices to develop their kids. Okay, it's a big responsibility having kids that play sports. You want to train them correctly. You want to bring them up in a way that's responsible. That weight of responsibility is a huge one. I'd love for this to be a resource for you parents that maybe don't know where to turn. There's a lot of nonsense out there, and obviously you can tell I'm very passionate about speaking life into all that BS, so that we can cut to the point and get your kids better in a way that keeps them healthy and feeling fulfilled. Okay, on the leadership side of things, I'm going to bring on people that are leaders in our community, are leaders on a more national scale, awesome men and women of God that, or maybe even, I'll be honest with you, they don't have to include Jesus in their life for us to talk about what it means to literally just be successful wherever their feet are planted, okay? And also how to be good stewards over the people they've been given, good shepherds to those under them, right? And then lastly, we're going to talk about Jesus. We are going to get a lot of believers on here to talk about that. It's just really hard for me to bring up any story without also identifying how things are working in the spirit, looking back on it. And, if you guys can learn anything from my 1 million mistakes over and the things that I've learned from it, I consider this a good use of my time. So, guys, welcome to the Train to Win podcast. I'm your host, Blake Bernard, and this has been our intro. Have a good night.